Hello, and welcome to my video. On the Talksheet today, I'll be discussing a phenomenon, a sort of a schema for understanding a certain slice of culture. I'm calling it this idea, the pop music messiah. What is a pop music messiah? Who have been or are currently pop music messiahs? Why do we invent them, and what do they mean to us? These are the questions I'll be jumping off from in this video. And before going further, I'd like to say that my ambition here is not to be correct, but just to express sort of these imperfect, honest thoughts and opinions, and the burden then is on me to make them compelling to you somehow. So, right now a blizzard is rolling through. I'm curled up with my room temperature ginger lime mule. And with all that, it means I think we're ready to get started. So first off, I need to clarify and define what I mean in this video, when I use the phrase pop music. So when I say pop music in this video, I mean literally music that is popular. That's popular and melodic, probably to some extent, and has been released in the 20th and 21st centuries. So like, pop music is the Beatles, Bad Bunny, Nirvana, Kendrick Lamar, Radiohead, Bob Dylan, Taylor Swift, Metallica, Bjork, Death Grips, etc. All these artists have their own genres, but they're all relatively popular artists, hence pop music. And I would say even like Beethoven, Mozart on this list as well. But they were born too early, and I think really the idea of the pop music artist is something that was kind of invented probably in the 1950s, as far as I'm aware. And then before starting properly, one last thing, I just want to identify maybe two obvious caveats to this discussion. One is that it will be within a Western mainstream scope. That's what I have access to. And just to acknowledge that definitely there are more artists. There are artists who are more artists essential to the evolution of pop music than I know about, and that have been remembered by white Western history, if you catch my drift. So this is far from comprehensive, if you will. So first, what is a messiah? First of all, like a straight up messiah. A messiah is just someone who is regarded as a savior of typically of a religious faith. None in particular. There can be a messiah. Well, mostly for Abrahamic religions, as far as I'm aware, but a savior figure. They arrive to lead or deliver their people to a literal or figurative promised land, and they're like a mouthpiece of the divine. So like Jesus, Muhammad, those are two pretty famous examples of a messiah. So then it follows that a pop music messiah would be a savior of pop music, right? The messiah would show us how pop music can and should be, and in doing so would maybe show us the error of our ways in following false, lesser pop music messiahs. they show us the light by showing something that is new, that helps us discover the world and ourselves. But this new thing at the same time is intimately knowable and as familiar to us as our own souls, but is ultimately a divine and clarifying force. And so then I'll add one more element here, just to break down these distinctions once more. Because, there have been so many people who have contributed to the history and the evolution of pop music, obviously. But they can't all be messiahs, in this schema. A person who is a messiah has to be, every so once in a while, or else it kind of loses its heft and meaning. So in a class slightly below Messiah are pop artists I would call priests, right? So in a religion, priests, broadly, they spread the message of the messiahs, right? The Messiah is the word, and the priests spread the word. And so within this pop music context, these are pop artists, I think, if they're priests, they are excellent students of pop music. And they still, they have incredible output, but they are in this construct working from, though, the word of pop music messiahs. They are building from a foundational output. They aren't creating something totally new. And while I very necessarily believe that all creative forms across all time are always borrowing, that I don't believe anything is absolutely original, I think we can agree, though, that there have been certain people throughout history who, in all fields, whether it be artistic or mathematical or scientific or spiritual, that these people have been ahead or prophetic, whether they knew it in their lifetime or not. So now I think the burden is on me to give a couple of examples about people who I think fall into each of these slots, the Messiah slot and the priest slot. Now remember, the idea of this video of me introducing this schema is that, that you, the viewer, might have fun applying it to your favorite artists and your own, your own slice of pop music. So this is just my own opinion, obviously. So I think a great example of a pop music messiah is someone like Miles Davis, where, I think it's important to know this man, he wasn't an auteur, he was surrounded by other geniuses of jazz as well to help, to play with him and bring his the visions to life and such, and make them maybe even better than they could have been without help. But broadly, essentially, the way we remember him is he introduced to the culture every new innovation or evolution of popular jazz from the 50s to about the 70s, right? He kind of spearheaded each part broadly. And yeah, he was someone who he heard music in his head and played it, and it changed the world. So that's, that if you want to bring it kind of back to a spiritual place, he heard music in his head, voice of God type beat, maybe. Anyway, then I think a great example of like an ideal sort of priest figure in pop culture is like the Beatles. I know that they're somewhat a divisive band for young people these days. But if you're one of these young people that think they are overrated or unk or whatever, for the sake of the video, just pretend that maybe you agree with me that intellectually they're like essential to pop music at the atomic level. And so priests are great interpreters. So in every in every tradition, religious tradition, you kind of have this. I know these terms just because I took a class on Judaism specifically, but it's like how in Judaism, you have a culture of writing these things called midrashes, which are, commentaries or interpretations or even like additions to, these old as time biblical stories or stories from the Torah and such. So in this case, again, in the analogy, I wouldn't be using the word priest, but a rabbi, but you get what I'm after here. So yeah, the Beatles were great students of pop music, maybe the greatest students the Western world ever produced. They understood it, they elaborated on it, and they set templates for pop artists decades to come. Still today, there are frameworks and arcs that still can be, I think, ascribed back to the Beatles' influence. But I would argue you can't say they really invented anything. As much as, again, with the caveat I mentioned earlier about nothing being original, as much as you can invent anything new, I don't think they did that. I think really the only thing they may have invented incidentally is fan culture as we know it today. So again, to kind of pare it down, it's like the Beatles as priests spread the word of pop. They were instrumental in its vitality. But a pop artist, say like Miles Davis, he is the word of his particular pop music. And I'll say too, in kind of rummaging around in my head and thinking about this, I would also say I think it's probably extremely difficult to be a pop music messiah and to be a white Gentile. I couldn't really think of any white Gentiles who I could pretty confidently say could fall into the pop music messiah category. Maybe Woody Guthrie. But I think that's partly because of, I don't think white people, especially in this space, are big vulture types. So it's hard to really accredit them with too much. Comment down below who your pop culture messiahs are and whether you think this schema works at all. So now let's put the money where the mouth is, yes, and we'll apply this framework to a contemporary example, and let's see what we find. So if you're an indie head like myself, if you're like a New York Times Pop Matters podcast type white guy, if you're a needle drop ass type white guy like myself, you've probably heard of this young man, Cameron Winter. Now, if you're not an indie head, all you need to know is that he's someone that indie heads really care about right now. We really care about him. and his output. He's like our Taylor Swift, in a sense. That's a broad equivocation, but just to give you maybe a sense of magnitude. So the boy is white and young, and he went to a nice music-based high school, grew up in New York City with parents who have successful careers in the arts industry. Certainly this helped him, but now, we're getting into the topic of nepotism. And I would like to just quickly address it, since nepotism seems to be, to address it, seems to be really important to discourse these days when people are discussing the relative success of pop artists. It seems that this is like a test that artists have to pass. Are they Nepo babies or not? And it's become sort of this surefire way to discredit an artist you don't like. If they're a Nepo baby, then they are less worthy of attention and adoration. My stance on nepotism, that's something I used to feel resentful about more willingly. I don't really anymore, just because I kind of reframed my thinking about them. Just because here's the way I see it now. How can I resent someone for capitalizing on an opportunity, the opportunity being their circumstance? How can I resent them for capitalizing on an opportunity and then giving me personally something, in this case music, giving me music that has enriched my life? Like, what's the problem there? Would I have not done the same thing? And to that end, the people, I would encourage my audience not to spend too much time resenting. But if you're going to resent anyone, you should resent people who have been given these opportunities and knowingly squandered them, right? And so people like Cameron Winter and his cohort, I won't go so far as to encourage y'all to celebrate him. But he took the opportunity and he clearly made the most of it, because look at him now. So back to the matter at hand. A large segment of culture, specifically this indie head segment that I described earlier, is very excited about the music he makes by himself and with the band Geese. And in 2025, they were golden. They had features with every media company you could imagine. They were in GQ, New Yorker, others. It really seemed like that the taste makers that be had come together secretly and made this unanimous decision that we, the people, are supposed to like this. Like, this is what's on the docket, y'all. And when you think about that, it's a decision, if we were to call it such. It's a decision that is both mysterious to me and not. These media companies, like, they need to talk about something, and rage sells best. We know that now. But also, in the world of media consumption, excitement is still, or simping and standing is still one of the highest, I think, probably engagement ways to allure engagement. So they gotta choose something to have people be excited about. And I can't help but feel that very much part of the Geese Cameron Winter identity is their New York City locality. the Made in NYC type beat. I'm sure this is to hoist up a New York City branded band is somehow advantageous to these coastal elite institutions. It just has to be. I don't know how, but it must be. And I am sure that enormous amounts of petty data are guiding all these navigations in the back rooms of Stereo Gum and Pitchfork and NME and whatever else. And in this case, I think it is convenient that the subjects, being Cameron Winter and Geese, that they've decided to kind of focus on for their hype machine in 2025 are actually considered very good by their consumer base, because I'm sure research would show that not every act that they gave this level of attention to was as highly regarded by their audience as GQ was treating them in whatever rollout that they're doing. Does this make sense? So yes, big media and the people came together and they all decided, we all agree, Cameron Winter and Geese is great. They're the big thing. And I think their ascendancy, the nature of their ascendancy, reflects the way we mostly ascribe merit to pop culture things in the 21st century, which is by comparing new products to products we've loved before. Now, so in the comments sections of which I lurk, I lurk in the shadows, shivering and slavering. I see often comparisons of Cameron Winter to Leonard Cohen, Bob Dylan, ye old singer-songwriters, men of real music making. And then, of course, in the comments, backlash arise to the comparison. The kind of idealists who say, why does everything have to be a comparison? Blah, blah, blah. And, then on and on it goes, and the snake eats its own tail. So Cameron Winter certainly is directly inspired by these two guys, at least, amongst others, I'm sure. He's explicitly said so. And I think you'd have to be delusional not to think that he doesn't enjoy the comparison, as he should. It's a really nice thing to be said about you, and I don't think I've even stated my own personal opinion on him yet in this video, but I think he's great. So I'm happy for him. But this is where we're at now. An artistic output is exceptional in how it reminds us of something else that's already happened. And it makes me really curious. And maybe, one could find out the answer to this if one went back through some archive of some kind. But in like the 50s, 60s, 70s, say, when Bob Dylan hit it big, when the Beatles hit it big, when Jimi Hendrix, whatever, Janis Joplin, whatever, doesn't matter who it is, was it true then too that a large part of the commentary of describing what was good about them, was it really reference based as it feels now, where the most used tool to describe, again, the merit of a thing is how much it reminds us of an older thing? Because again, I don't believe that this is a new tendency for us. I can't believe that because, you know, it's like we don't change that much. But in my head, I have a hard time imagining it like Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder, Madonna. Like, what did they say? Because to me, it seems like, you know, say when the Beatles put out Strawberry Fields, it's like, it seems like in a case like that, and in these artists I also just mentioned, like in that place and time, it seems like all you can really say is like, wow, this is the new thing, isn't it? This is the new thing. I guess this is the new thing. Yeah, I'm making a great point here. But that's something I think about is like, I wonder what the discourse was like back then in utilizing references to past things when pop music, at least as far as I see it, was so in its infancy. Because here's the thing is, you know, I agree. As a white guy who really loves Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen, when I, you know, try to really scrutinize my, I'll even say love for Cameron Winter's music, I'm like, okay, what's going on here? What do I like about it? I try to, you know, go real deep. And it does seem like there is a quality to his songwriting that taps into a legacy, right? That these older songwriters were also tapping into. A legacy that you could start to see it this way doesn't really belong to anyone, right? So maybe it's not so much, you could think of it this way, that it's not so much that he's copying Leonard Cohen and copying Bob Dylan, not so much that geese are copying Radiohead and the Strokes, as much as all these groups of people are kind of drawing from this same eternal, ephemeral, white guy pool of inspiration. You know what I mean? I'm getting a little woo-woo here. And when I said copy earlier, I don't mean, you know, anything as strict as that, like cheating off of a test paper. But this is what I meant to say is that, you know, if all things are borrowing, maybe what we're not really, maybe we're not borrowing from each other. Maybe we are a little bit, but maybe also we've all, you know, in musical tradition, whether it be white guy, indie rock, hip hop, genres, you know, maybe in each of those, there's something we're drawing from that the ultimate inspiration that is existing where my hand is hovering. That could be true. And so, you know, we've deviated on this Talksheet episode a bit from the topic of pop music messiah, and that's okay. That's kind of what I wanted to have happen in this video, to show that, to allow these Talksheet videos to have this sort of capacity. You know, they might get a little cluttered, inconclusive, or unconvincing, but maybe I'll have thrown out enough stuff for you, the viewer, to enjoy, or maybe there's something for you to chew on. So anyway, what's up? Is Cameron Winter a pop music messiah? Easy. No. Could he be one day? Sure. Why not? You know, I'm amenable to that. He's certainly a priest, an excellent student of the craft that he is producing, which is awesome. You know, he's a young guy. He's already doing so well. Kudos. You know, I could even see, you know, based on what we've been talking about, I could even see inventing a third category for guys like him. You know, second coming. You know, the promised return of the real songwriter man, to end the world and divide pop sinners from pop saints, you know. Not the first coming. But here in the 21st century, we got a second coming. But ultimately, I think we have reached a point where the next pop music messiah will not come from NYC or LA or anywhere in the US or in a Western nation. I think our lot is, we'll continue probably to churn out good priests and students of the game. But whatever new element that will become the new pop music that pushes all this shit forward into ways that maybe we can't even quite imagine yet, I don't think that'll come from a Western nation. That seems unlikely to me at this point. But maybe you're watching this video and you're of the opinion that the West never produced a pop messiah in the first place, which is valid, of course. And I'd be very interested to hear anyone else's POVs on this question of who qualifies. Because again, I gave Miles Davis as an example. I'm pretty confident in that. I was pleased to have thought of that for the sake of this video. But it's tough when you think about it, especially when you try to delineate messiahs from priests, and then if you're me, you start to question, is this even does this really work? Is this a worthwhile pursuit? But we had fun, didn't we? I think we did. So let me know, who's your pop music messiah? Who's your pop music priest? And you won't be wrong, which is great. Thank you for joining me for this video. That was a bit different from the last one. I enjoyed having you here, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.